Blog Talk Radio.
All aboard for Success Express, your business, career, and financial radio magazine. Hosted by Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Welcome, everybody. It is December 9th, 2020. And today we're going to talk about new employment laws for 2021 because they're coming up right now. So welcome to Big Blend Radio Success Express Show. We're your hosts, Nancy Reed and Lisa Smith, the mother-daughter travel team on our Love Your Parks tour, traveling full-time across the country. And we publish Big Blend Radio and TV magazine and Parks and Travel magazine. You can see them both at BigBlendMagazines.com. And today we are airing live from Madison, Wisconsin, and our guest is from sunny San Diego, employment attorney Ward-Heinrichs. And if you keep up with Ward, I know, he's in sunny San Diego, Ward. How sunny is it?
Well, it's funny that you should ask. Right now it's not very sunny. I'm looking out my window, and we've got some light cloud coverage, and it's cooler. You know, we're down to, well, our high is a shivering 68 today.
Listen, our highs are just over 40 today.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's a big difference between Madison and here.
Hey, listen,
it'll be
you were in
tomorrow,
Indiana.
so I'm not worried about it.
You were in Indiana. You grew up partly in Indiana. You know about this weather, don't you? You do.
Yeah, well, you know, Wisconsin is further north, so they have worse weather than Indiana. But Indiana, we got some really cold days. I remember negative 30 with a chill every once in a while. Used to get pretty much snow. So yeah, no, I've lived through winters.
Well, I'll tell you what, we are in a cool place in Madison. Madison is a capital city, so it's really cool. And apparently there's a lot of beer and cheese curds, so we can't complain about that, you know. And so, you know, I'm just saying it's all good. However, you know, I know you're going to talk about COVID laws, and because we've got to go over all the new laws for 2021, some of them that we've talked about over the last quarter that have gone into effect. But life has changed. I thought we were going to still be talking about independent contractors and minimum wage, and, you know, things have changed a little bit of that still, but things have really changed this year. But I do want to give everyone your website, Ward, because it's important.
Okay.
It's a good address. It's the best employment attorney, San Diego.com. And just for those following, if you want to have the list of laws that Ward is talking about, he's got them up on our website. You can go to blendradioandtv.com. And also, if you're listening through Blog Talk, the link is right there. Just go to blendradioandtv.com, type in 2021 employment laws, and you'll find the article. It'll also be in our upcoming issue of Big Blend Radio and TV magazine, so everyone can follow up with that. Ward, before we get started, do you think any of these could change? Because this last year, 2020, has been like up, down, like I was going to say something funny, and I'm going to behave myself, but it's been like nonstop change.
That'll be new. That'll be different.
Yeah, right. Why? No, listen, I've tried to behave. This is always a big annual show with Ward. You know, it's always a big one because this is what's carrying people through that they need to know for the next year, so you don't get nailed with any new laws. I was going to say,
yep.
Like anything that's changed. And, you know, that's the thing. Businesses don't, you know, the government doesn't go, hey, here, you've got a new law you need to watch out for. Ward lets you know. So, especially if you're in California and San Diego. But do you think anything will change over the year with these laws that you're going to talk about?
Oh, that's a good question. The emergency sick leave laws are kind of changing all the time, and I just read something before coming on air about Cal OSHA, and they have a requirement that if you get COVID-19 on the job, you get paid the whole time, your full pay while you're out, or if you're exposed to someone at the job who had COVID-19. So that's a nuance that I didn't even address. and that gives you better rights than the Family First Coronavirus Response Act and California Corona paid sick leave stuff. So yes, I guess the answer really is, yeah, I think Cal OSHA is going to change things. Will we have more emergency legislation? I don't know. I kind of think they've probably done that. The emergencies are probably over. But I'll tell you what, if COVID gets worse, then yeah, I think you will see. If everyone starts getting their vaccinations and things start getting back to a more normal type of business cycle and life in general, then no, I don't think the legislature will probably act.
It's going to be interesting because of the vaccine thing, because even I wonder about businesses, like they're saying like the government can't really force you to do it, but then businesses may say you can only work here if you've had the vaccine. Like that's kind of an interest. That's what
generally
I see
that's
getting
true.
weird. That can get weird.
But what about the idea of like who tells the businesses what they should do? Because some of our clients are saying they're not really receiving anything that tells them what they're supposed to do. So who is? How do the businesses know what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, well, all right. So part of the problem may be that if businesses don't know what to do and there's not some type of agency investigating that, which can happen, then, no harm, no foul. But the problem is someone really might reach out and get you. In California, they're getting so serious about it. I haven't heard about door-to-door enforcement, but the enforcement's coming down and more businesses getting notices. So assuming something like that happens, then, or you have a fear of that happening, then yeah, an employment law attorney should be up on this. But you can also go to websites like the Secretary of State website, the Cal OSHA website, the OSHA website for the United States, what do they call it? DLSE? No, not DLSE. It's the federal agency that enforces these types of laws, and I'm not remembering it right off the top of my head, and I should. But anyway, those websites are pretty good, and they spell things out pretty well.
It's about understanding it, though.
I'm sorry?
Nancy, I was going to say the onus is on the business owner to go and see what they're supposed to be doing as opposed to waiting for someone to tell them.
Yes, that is true. Now, in California, the news has covered this pretty seriously. So if you don't pay, you have to know that something's going on and that there are websites you can go to by just watching the morning news. There are also local websites for, San Diego, the city of San Diego, and others that have a lot of good stuff on it as well. So, that information's out there for anyone who's paying attention at all. And if you're not, you can always just look it up on the internet too and go find it. But you're right. No one's all right. So the government's not sending a letter to each business and saying, "Here's what you got to know." No, that's not happening. But the media's been pretty good, I think.
But it's about understanding it, and that's what I think is important. Like even what we're doing with our discussion with you is understanding it all. And it's not just employers, it's employees understanding what their rights are, what they should expect. It's that. And it's like when you start even seeing AB5 exemption, like, am I on AB5? Am I exempt? What am I? So there's those terms that kind of get you. Maybe, that's what I love about you being on the show is you explain this stuff and we get to have fun doing it and getting to understand these things. California, Nancy and I we were in California at the beginning of the pandemic and we had a wonderful time. Yes, we had a wonderful time out in Southern California in the Joshua Tree area, and we were going to go up to Central California and they said, no, you ain't coming here because we closed. And we went, okay, we're going east. And some places said, well, we're closed, but now you get to detour. We've done a lot of detours this year and a lot of very safe, very, very safe travel. I think the hardest one of the hardest. Well, there's so many, musicians, entertainment places, movies, theaters, the arts, and restaurants. Restaurants have really taken it in a hard way, but some have been able to stay open.
Absolutely.
But it's hard to know what to order because the next day you could be closed. That's the hard thing I think for restaurants.
Yeah.
It's like you're ordering food, whereas a venue may be okay. It sucks. We have to close for a few days. Somebody has COVID, but it's a restaurant. You're ordering food that could go off after a bit, especially if you're farm to table. You're California. You are farm to table, man. So that's hard.
Yeah.
Really hard.
In fact, I just went to a restaurant before the governor closed. I don't know if you realize or not, but California has a blanket stay-at-home order for 21 days. Yeah. So before all that happened, I did go to a restaurant. It's called Farm to Table. So you're right. That's pretty popular in California, and they're going to have a problem with their inventory that maybe other businesses won't have. But believe me, any business that has to close or reduce its volume, they're hurting. The big chains will make it. They're not going to declare bankruptcy. They'll be okay, but they're not going to make nearly as much money as they would have.
Yeah.
But restaurants, like you've already said, other small businesses have really taken it on the chops. I hear this stuff all the time, and it's been tough. Now there are people who have done well. Amazon's the poster child of that, but I correspond with other people who have smaller businesses, maybe similar types of models, and some of them say I've grown this year. So it just kind of depends on the business, but a lot of them are not doing well.
What about the employees? What have you heard on that side? In regards to, it's COVID. I know we'll get into the new laws and everything, but employees, it's like, hey, we're in this career, and my career sucks. One of them being tourism and hospitality, working in restaurants, all of that as the employee. It's like you could be doing this, you could have been in it for 20, 30 years, and now suddenly have to make a drastic change maybe. Or like say, I'm going to go into something new, and it's like this whole twirl around. Or do you stick it out? This is a really, it sucks for tourism and the hospitality industry has been, we've done shows on it for years. We've done seminars, we've done workshops, we've traveled, we've done it and talked about tourism is one of, if you do it right and responsibly, you talk nature and history and all of that. If you do responsible tourism, you're going to have the right people to come to your town, and it's one of those industries that can bring foreign money into your town, whether it's foreign money down the road, regionally or internationally. This was one of the safest industries that can employ people from, the youngest age, all that's legal, all the way up. And this was the one thing that none of us saw coming in the tourism industry. Really, I think maybe some people knew, a pandemic could take it us, but we're not going to look at that because none of what the hell, And here it is, and this, and I think the world is realizing from this how much tourism does really mean to us as people and travelers, and just how big the industry is, and it really knocked it. It's hard.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The poster child for that is Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of businesses out there. Now, I don't correspond with them, but I've read stuff about them and how they're really hurting out there. They're starting to open up a little bit, and they've been very careful about letting people in and out. But yeah, that economy's been particularly hurt.
Wow. So California, when you have a blanket, order like this, right? When you have this blanket thing going on, does that mean you can't go hiking or I'm trying to go back to where we were, Joshua Tree National Park. We just posted an article about Amboy Crater, for example, in Southern California, Mojave Trails National Monument. We went there because we just had this feeling it was going to be the big shutdown of national parks. And we ran out to the park again because we wanted to film these caterpillars that were hatching out of the trees. It's crazy. These tent caterpillars. They create these big spider web things, and I thought they were spiders, but they weren't. They were caterpillars eating their way out of their web. So it was really cool. I know nobody really wants to hear that part when they call into a law show, but this was
Too
true.
late.
I know.
Yeah,
Sorry,
really.
welcome to Big One Radio. We wanted to go and film them coming out now because we saw them eating part of their way out, but then we wanted to do a follow-up video, and the park was closing down. That's it. We got turned around, and we're like, well, we're out now. We got our little picnic. We ended up in Amboy Crater, and you could do that. So is it that strength of a shutdown that people can't go in parks, or like can we walk in your community park? Like how strong is that shutdown?
No, most outdoor recreation has continued, and the governor allowed it to continue. Part of the reasoning is if you're at all safe outdoors, you should not be communing. You shouldn't. The transmission of COVID doesn't really happen very effectively, so you're safer out there. And the idea is, you need to get out and do some things. You need to get your exercise. So, no, unless there's individual parks that have decided to shut down, because I know some of the federal parks in San Diego did, and I think they still are. But that doesn't mean you can't go into them. It just means that you don't have some of the amenities anymore.
Yeah.
But other than that, you can get out and exercise and access public spaces.
Okay. So because it does go back into employment law because people monitor the parks. And that's the thing. You got to think about all these health workers and all the caretakers of the land. That everybody that's out there doing stuff, they're in front of it. Grocery store workers, men. So what happens in regards to COVID-19 laws going into 2021? We're going to turn 21, people. In regards to you had some of the new laws where I know we've done shows on this, but workers' compensation. Let's start with that. That's changed up a little bit.
Yeah, and that's a COVID regulation. That was an emergency regulation, and there's a presumption that if you get come down with COVID, that it's because of work. And there was a time limit on that, and depending on what industry you're in. There's also a wrinkle that I didn't mention in my article, and that was if you got exposed to someone at work who had it, then you're presumed to have gotten it at work, and so then workers' compensation system would cover that as a work injury.
Wow.
Okay. Wow. Okay. That's a new thing.
But how did they know for sure it was at work? Because you might have saw a friend not, how do they pinpoint? Wow.
Well, no, it's a presumption, meaning that unless the person who's challenging it, which would be the business in this case, can show facts that contradict that presumption, then it's assumed that it's at work. But the business can still say, oh no, he didn't get it at work. We got information from his doctor through the discovery process that says that he got it when he was at a party.
Yeah.
So, and there might be millions of different ways of proving that. Maybe you actually interview someone who says, "Oh yeah, no, he was with me and I had it, and that's how he got it." So
yeah,
wow,
yeah. That's happening on military bases. I know in California, I know of one that that kind of happens. It's like, hey, we went out, and you weren't supposed to. Sorry, oopsie. But it's true.
That's super common. Oh yeah, that's really common.
It's going to happen. Because people are human. We're not perfect human specimens. Like we're not. We're social animals. We're social animals. We are, and that's the thing. So people are going to get it from each other no matter what at some point. And if you're going to work, your chances are there to get it. And but there has to be safety protocols at work, right? So that's the thing. It's like. People should, going into business, you're wearing a mask. That's important, all of that. But what I've seen is like a restaurant is open. Like I've seen just recently in an art center I go to all the time when we're in the area. Say, someone's got COVID, we're shut for like so many days. And so I see a lot of that kind of thing happen. So what's happening in regards to that with COVID for 2021 protecting employees?
Well, all the stuff that I've listed is stuff that's already actually in place. So there's really nothing new because it's all emergency declarations. For 2021, like we said earlier in the show, there's nothing new on the horizon unless, like I said, unless I think it gets worse. Then something new for 2021. But these other things, like the California Paid Sick Leave and the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, which is sick leave and paid FMLA leave, that's all stuff that's already been in place.
Okay, so we'll move on then. Let's go to AB5 exemptions, because the last time you were on, it was the last time you were on the show, we talked about it. And here we go into, especially with California, talking about the independent contractor law and that test. And it was interesting about who was exempt and who wasn't. And I think it was right after the show, Uber and Lyft and everybody went to Congress or something. And I'm like, dude, do we have to change it? And you're like, no, we don't have to change anything in the article yet. And then boom, now it's like, it's now basically, did they win? Like, what happened with that?
Yes. So two things have happened recently. The governor signed emergency order. Now, this is one of those that's already in effect. He signed it, I believe it was September 4, and it became effective exactly on that day. And what that new legislation is called AB 2257, it just created many more exemptions for AB 5. So that means those new exemptions will allow employers to say this person is an independent contractor because we're exempt. We met all the requirements of this new exemption. And they broaden some of the old exemptions. So that's the first thing that happened. And then the second thing that happened was the Prop 22, which Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash were mostly responsible for. And I just heard the other day they spent $200 million on that. Wow.
Whoa. Yeah.
Well, we were bombarded with commercials. I mean, it was constant, right up until the day of the election day. And that passed by a pretty sizable majority. I think it was 58%, so 42% against it and 58% for it. And so that created an exemption for all those app-based driving companies like Uber and Lyft.
Wow. So basically, it's a gig economy, and I think the world is going that way, especially during COVID times. I mean, the last few shows you were on, even when we were on the farm in East Tennessee drinking moonshine. No, we weren't having moonshine, I promise. But we were talking about that. We all get hot under the collar because, especially now in COVID, if someone has having maybe been laid off, right, and a lot of people have, or furloughed or whatever, that they need to be able to go, hey, I got a new car, and I need to pay the bills on the car. I need to go do Uber. And it's like, hello, no, you can't. This is now, and the employee versus, independent contractor thing. So it's really an important thing right now. So at that time when we talked, they were looking at scrapping Uber and Lyft and DoorDash. And now that was a thing that they just signed in. They passed that. Or am I getting that right?
No, you're right.
Because LA was saying no.
Uber was talking. Well, Uber was talking about leaving California.
I know. It's what? You can't do that. You're in Hollywood, dudes. You got San Francisco. Who the heck wants to drive around San Francisco?
I'm not sure they would have, but they said that.
As we travel the states, okay, and having been born and lived and raised in California, I have to say, in other states, running a business looks a lot more profitable than in California at some times. Just because in some states you don't have state taxes, and in other ones you do, and then there's just different laws for different states. So I don't know. The weather is really cool in California, but there are times when you have to look and say,
right now we can stay warm.
No, but there are some times when you look and say, well, as a business, what is the best state to open a business in. And when
Mm.
there's states that don't have like state taxes, you win.
Well, it depends on your
California
business.
is highly
Yeah.
regulated. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Elon Musk said that he's moving to
Yeah,
Texas.
yeah,
That was
yeah,
engendered because of the governor's shutdown, I think. I
Yeah,
didn't read
he
the
told
article. I
them where
just
to
saw
go.
a blurb on it.
yeah. I saw
Yeah, he
that.
Um,
told them
Yeah,
where to go. And that's unfortunate
yeah.
because he was doing all kinds of things for LA
Well,
in
we'll
regards to
see.
their transportation.
He
He was
threatened
doing
that
a whole
before. We'll
I
see
don't
Yeah,
how
know.
and
he
he
does.
and
But he
he was
might.
saying he was doing this whole highway system for them, like how to do like underground tunnel things, and
Yes.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what, like, I don't know, like, but I know he threatened stuff, but like he's like, I don't know, man, he is from another planet.
Yeah,
I
I was
think he's
just
part
gonna say if
alien,
there's an alien,
but
there it
he's
is.
smart. He's smart. He's really
He's a
really
smart
smart.
alien.
He's a
Yes, a
smart.
really
Yeah, that's
smart
why I
one.
say he's not just from this planet, man. He's got other things in there. It's cool. But
Mhm.
I think but that's the whole. California also has this amazing bounty of wine and ocean and deserts and mountains, and there's reasons why people want to be in California. So it's
Of
like
course.
balancing your business. If you're going to go in there and know it's going to be like that, then you gotta call Ward so you set up straight. And speaking of that, people that do go and open up a business, when I know I've touched on this before, but this is always our big annual show, so everyone lean in. It's cool. When you start a business in California, or even open a second business, third, start franchising, whatever you're doing, is it wise to seek a time with an employment attorney such as yourself to say, hey, this is what I need to know about when I start having employees?
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because the minute you start expanding out and hiring employees or hiring workers, I mean, they might be
Mhm.
1099, and you got to be super careful with that. Now, anytime you have someone else working for you, yeah, you do yourself a favor by asking some questions to someone who knows. And now
Yeah.
I get though that the business is starting out, they don't have a lot of money, so they're just trying to make it happen. So I understand why some of those businesses don't make the phone calls. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
you might be better off doing it. And I certainly work with small businesses to help them out, and we could work something out that would be more feasible than
Mm.
a larger client who has 50 employees. So, and I'll do lunches and work something out that way and give advice. And I've had some businesses come back and do that several times. Just, all right, I'll spend an hour with you, buy me lunch, and, pay me a little money, and I'll give you some advice. And people are really happy with that kind of thing. And that's a
Sweet.
reasonable way of taking care of some of the issues.
That's really nice because I think it's hard, and I
It
think
is
when you are
hard.
in a state that is beautiful, I mean, I love California. You have everything
Me
there.
too.
It's my birth state, it's my home. And, I always think like, okay, there's a lot going on. And some of the laws that are all the red tape sometimes needs to be there too, depending on what it is. So I think it's an interesting thing, but I think small businesses, I think this like last year and 2 years, and I think it's been a 5 to 10 years thing, honestly, has been having a hard time with what's been going. They're not getting a fair shake, let's put it that way, in regards to what the government's doing. And I think this year has been a big fight for it. And this year with COVID it's not just the tourism industry, it's anybody, mom and pops downtown. Everything's changed up, and maybe some of the changes will be for good. And some changes have gotten businesses to look at, oh, wow, I could have done this and I didn't do this before, but now I'm going to do it, and they're being more profitable. So a lot of, like you were saying earlier, like some of your clients just like, I'm doing really good, and then some aren't. It's like a different, everybody is 100% different, but small businesses do need that help, and they're fighting all the time. The minimum wage, we've talked about that. That's something we should touch on too, because that's still always changing. That was like it's going to go up every year, right? Especially in California, every year. That everyone should be aware of that. That's something that's hard for the employers, better for the employees, but maybe better all around, but hard. But it's still happening.
Yeah, no, does increase costs, and we've seen it. At least I feel like I've seen it. I've read some things that indicate that, but there hasn't been a study that says this. But when I go to a restaurant, I know I pay more than I used to 5 years ago, and when I talk to my restaurant clients, they go, "Well, yeah, there's two things. There's the labor cost, which is going up, so that's going to drive prices up, and there's product cost too. And depending on who you talk to, they say that that's been steadily increasing as well. So for both reasons, we've seen restaurant prices go up. And you're right. Every year it goes up $1 for the minimum wage, and so we're at $13 and $14 an hour this year, depending on the size of the business, how many employees they have. 25 or fewer, it's 13, and 26 or more, it's $14 an hour. And then that gets capped at 15 for the state. In 2023, that's when those who have 25 or fewer will be at 15, and then I haven't heard the legislature talk about a new law yet. You never know; there could be a new law, but based on the old law, that's as high as it goes.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's going to be interesting what happens federally too. As Biden takes presidency.
Oh,
and all that.
They've been pushing for higher federal minimum wage, and that'll affect some states. Not California. The federal minimum wage won't ever outpace California's own minimum wage, but there are places. I'm just trying to think. I think Wyoming is tied to the federal minimum wage, so that would go up necessarily. And others would be affected as well.
Well, what about pot, man? Now they're saying that pot's going to be legal. We've done shows on pot, right, with you, and it's like everybody could line up across the country. I mean, hey, if could you imagine?
Well, yeah, we have a burgeoning marijuana industry, no doubt, because it's legal to own. I mean, there are restrictions on it. It's not wide open, but so many states don't have anything like that at all. I think Colorado is an exception, but. So there's an industry there that that's something I don't know much about. I don't know if COVID affected that a lot. I could see how it maybe had an opposite effect, actually helped them, but I'm not sure. But regardless, the long-term outlook is that the marijuana industry will generate a lot of revenue.
Do you need me to do research, Ward? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, please research that.
I mean, we're going across the country. I'll just go find out. I'll go from one to no. I haven't done that in years. But I mean, come on. But it's I don't know. It's going to be really. I think that's going to be a big shift in 2021. What happens in weed? It's all the states federally, and then I was going like, okay, is this a federal law? And then what's going to happen? Like, in the states trump the federal thing? We always talk about that. Because what happens in California is not always what San Diego will do. It's all different. The city, county, state, federal. So that's going to be really interesting. And I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about
in the road.
different, whether marijuana will remain to be illegal at the federal level we'll see. We'll see if Biden makes that happen or not. I think the Democrats are leaning that way. And as long as it's not legal, though, at the federal level, it's still not legal in California because under a federal law, it's not legal, and federal law generally trumps state law. But, is anyone going to enforce that federal law anymore? Yeah, to some degree they do, border bust, things like that. But technically, the laws that allow people to cultivate and sell marijuana legally in California are illegal under federal law.
So employment law, like if you work for a dispensary or you work for a grower, isn't that like an interesting thing for you? In regards to employment law, can you represent someone that you know what I mean? Isn't that like a weird gray area or green area, I should say?
I haven't done it. I've talked to a few people in the industry who have called my office for whatever reason, but I've never had a client in that industry yet.
Just you wait.
Eventually it'll happen. Eventually it will happen.
Yeah.
But no, I don't. And because I know it will happen at some point, I'm not worried about any, weird distinction between federal and state law, because if I go in and represent a place that sells marijuana legally in California, and some for whatever reason, whether it's a wage violation or something else, the feds aren't going to come in and say, "Hey, you represent them, therefore you're going to jail." No, that'll never happen. I'm not doing the activity, so I'm okay.
Yeah,
I'm just looking at this map, and there's only 6 states now that it is fully illegal to possess or have anything to do with marijuana. There's only 6.
Wisconsin, what is it? They have cheese curds. We got good
No,
munchies.
we're good. We're good. It's medical and decriminalized, medical and then just decriminalized, and fully illegal. There's only 6 states.
Wow.
That doesn't surprise me. Yeah, that's the trend.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I'm looking at this map, just on the internet. Not sure if this is totally up to date or whatever, but there it is. Last updated November 4th, 2020. There's only 6 states that it's fully illegal.
Well, apparently, this was all an act of William Hearst that wanted it to go out because of some other deal he had going on for his thing. He made pot want to be like the Reefer Madness, and it goes back to William Hearst. I don't know if it's true. Just putting it out there for people to look at.
I will just now do this. South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, Kansas, Wyoming, Idaho. Do not go smoke there.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Well, do you know you sent us on the tour to do a Law and Order story series for you? Well, we've done a lot of courthouses, which have been really interesting, graveyards, prisons. We're going to do a whole book with you next year, Law and Order across the country. I know. We had our own Law and Order thing that happened the other day in Alabama.
Uh-oh.
We had some. I called 911 because a girl came driving in her car. Well, obviously, screaming, "Call 911!" And I'm like, "What for?"
At the gas station.
It's 5 a.m. at the gas station. She drives up next to me, and her boyfriend, I'm assuming his boyfriend, allegedly, whatever it was chasing her, and she was dented on her side, and they had a car chase in the gas station, and in the parking lot around, and on the street. And I called 911, and within 3 minutes, 3 cops, literally 3 minutes, 3 cops pulled that guy down. It was crazy. And then that girl tried to jump in our car, and Nancy told her where to go. But anyway, it was a crazy scenario. And no bad cop stuff, it was not. But it was crazy. It was a domestic violence. And then I discovered you can go online and see people's mugshots and see that, that was them arrested. They both got arrested.
Wow.
No, it was actually kind of scary. And my thing was, we're sitting there going through this whole thing, and I know that they've got to have cameras, right? The girl, it was one of those gas stations with a little shop, not like the big shop, like a little thing where they talk to you from the outside kind of thing. And the girl went to the bathroom, came out, that was running the gas station, yells out, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "Well, don't worry, I called 911. And I'm going, what about the safety of workers in that situation?
Mm-hmm.
No, and what about the people wearing masks or not wearing masks? Like this whole thing. I mean, I didn't want to call you, Ward, because it was like 5 a.m, in Alabama.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
But there's a thing about safety of employees of stuff like that, and then like people not wearing a mask. And Karen, she wasn't wearing a mask. That lady, and then Nancy was like, "You are not getting I won't say the words on the show, but those are reserved for our next guest coming on." So, you know what I mean? But that's the thing. So there's all kinds of things to think about in regards to being an employer, those kind of safety issues. Do you ever deal with that? Or does that go to workman's comp? I know you say that's a different thing.
Yeah, well, an injury at work is always workers' comp. Doesn't mean that it can't be something else as well. But generally, no, I don't deal with that type of thing. However, safety at work, which is a big thing under COVID, and we've touched on it before, the employer has to provide a safe and healthy workplace.
Right.
And so there are a couple statutes that talk about, well, what if an employee complains about not following and just not following a health directive? And so in this case, we're talking about COVID. and if there's retaliation, then they can sue. And if it's truly not healthy and safety according to the requirements of the code, then and they're discriminated against in any way, then they can sue again. So there is protection there, and it is something I do deal with now and again. Not all the time, but sometimes. But I did want to touch on a couple other things real quick. Because there's two big things that happen in California that are going to be put in place on January 1st, 2021. And one is the expansion of the California Family Rights Act, which before, if you had 50 or more employees, you had to give them 12 weeks of unpaid leave for serious health conditions or serious health conditions of kids. And now it's down to 5 employees. So that is huge. That means many, many more employers are now going to have to give leave for any of those reasons. So that's just a big, big thing. Wow. And the other one that I thought you might be interested in was the board of directors, where we talked about this before, where, there have to be a certain number of women on the board of directors of companies that have the principal executive office in California. But now it's also for underrepresented communities. And so they're required now to have at least one from an underrepresented community on any board of directors that has its principal executive office in California. And that will go up next year. And I won't get into all the details of that, but it will require more from underrepresented communities to be on boards.
I
thought
that.
That was pretty big.
Yeah, I think that's really big too, because it's like, okay, we're looking at women after the Me Too movement, and we're looking at Black Lives Matter. We're looking at all these, issues that have been, social issues our country has been facing. And I want to touch on sexual harassment too. That was my other thing.
Okay.
Because talking about all that too, the safety, that's where I was going with it. But a board of directors, it's like, yeah, you should be diverse. But it's, so it is making people look at it. It's interesting. We just interviewed an author today, and one of her characters in her book, and for a young adult book, it's called Prepped, and it's about people like prepping for her one character is Korean, and she goes, when do you read a book with a Korean character? Seriously, that's not a historical novel, right? And that's what she's saying. They're so underrepresented in movies, and it's like you're just kind of shut off. And so that's what I like what you're saying about board of directors getting, hey, let's have diversity. And I think that would also maybe lead also to you're going to go out into communities and start to search for the right people, right? I mean, think about it. Like, you're going to have to have how many people on there? You're going to have to break some barriers that you've put up as a company. So when you say a board of directors, this is going to be kind of a bigger company, right, to be able to do that?
Yes, but it doesn't specify the size of the company, although you're right. Smaller corporations in California who would have their principal place in California often have, one person who's on the board and one person who is all the officers. So that's not going to change them. They're not going to, well, that's interesting. I hadn't even thought of that. I assume that maybe there is a size limit.
Well, you're saying like
I'm not
5.
aware
You
of.
said it has to be over 5, and in your article it says over 5.
But there's so many that are, well, no. It says you need one woman, and it's going to be different really soon. It's going to be more, and one person from an underrepresented community on your board of directors if you have a principal executive office in California. So that means anyone. Now, maybe I just don't know the statute well enough. I'm sure that if you just have a mom and pop and you have 1 or 2 officers, that they're going to still be able to do that. They don't have to say, hey, I know you don't know me, but I want you to be on my board of directors. I don't think that makes sense, and there must be some, exemption for that type of situation.
Wow. Yep, because, there's supposedly some kind of qualification for being on a board?
Yeah.
Or not?
Well, there's no statutory qualification in terms of schooling or anything. Board of directors can basically have anyone they want on it, but there's always a small group of people who know another small group of people who say, hey, we want you on here, and often there are people who are experts in areas who are on boards. But there's no requirement that you have a high school degree, for instance.
No, because it's a networking thing. Oh no, it's like you have your little networking cocktail parties now. It's Zoom cocktail parties, and you go, I want so and so because so and so is good because they can bring clients in. It's like look at Boston Legal, man. You watch Boston Legal. That's all about having the right people on your board. I know it's old school. Like, come on, Ward. Did you ever watch Boston Legal? Like old school.
Oh.
Come on. You had to watch William Shatner
William Shatner. Yes, I did watch Boston Legal. Yes.
Okay, come on. But they were all about what was going on in the boardroom and who was like, oh no, we're going to get this person out and do this and that, and you had to know your board laws, So, but that was the thing. It's like when you look at this, though, it's like saying by December 31st, 2021, that's when it's really going to be, that's when you have to have what it says: a corporation with 5 members on the board to have 2 women, that and boards with 6 or more members to have at least 3 women, and then it starts going. And by the end, it's one of those that's going to keep growing and growing. It gives the business time to sort itself out and get. It does. Anything that's good. I mean, a year. You should be able to find somebody in a year or 2.
Oh,
yeah.
No,
yeah.
Right. You should be able to make those changes, certainly.
Yeah, you should. And I think this is important, too, because it does, Nancy, I think where Nancy was going is like, okay, you got to have the people with the degrees and everything, and where are we going with our education? That's the other part of that parcel, I think, where she's going is making sure that our education system is up to date, and that's whole other show. But sexual harassment training. I want to get back to this because this is, still Harvey Weinstein's going down, dude. He's like, take him out. He is. It's great. Take him down. And Bill Cosby, like, seriously, the 2 of them can put him on an island, Epstein's island, right? We'll put him out there. But what's going on? Because it seems like they're making it. You've been, like, I don't want to say warned, but you've been alerting people that this was coming. Like even last year, you were saying this is coming. Yeah, January 1st.
Yeah. That law was passed, I think, 2 years ago, and it was, I think, originally supposed to go into effect. Let me see. They put it off for a year. Yeah, I think it was supposed to go into effect on January 1st, 2019, and then they gave it another year for 2021. Is that correct? Yeah, I think so. And then when COVID started hitting, they said, "Well, we're going to kick the can down the road again for basically another year." So that law has been passed for a while, and the date by which everyone has to be in compliance has moved. But I'm going to guess that this is the last movement that people are going to have to comply. Now, to me, it's kind of maybe tough in some businesses who can't even meet anymore to have these classes to require them now in the middle of COVID to have it. So we'll wait and see. Maybe they'll kick the can down the road one more time. But if they don't, because they've kicked the can down the road a couple times now, then yes, by January 1st, 2021, then everyone they're going to have these classes for everyone, an hour for all employees in any business that has 5 or more employees, and then 2 hours for all managers and supervisors.
Well, I think this is interesting in COVID times because, you've got to think about, like, okay, you're not at work, so it may not be like if you're not in there's people in work situations now that are also different. And less employees, which means that you may be more one-on-one with someone than normal. You may used to have 10 people in a kitchen, now you have 2 or 3. So the opportunity for harassment is a little bit bigger. You know what I mean? There's like.
I would say the opposite on that. I think where you have more people, the opportunity for harassment's increased. Now, I think you're thinking, well, because there's more people there, they're all watching out for each other, and only one-on-one situations where it happens. Well, no, my experience has been Yeah, there's more
You're not,
potential with more employees.
because you're hidden. You're kind of hidden. You're like, you can,
Well, there's just more people to pick on.
Yeah.
And more
okay.
people to do the
The
picking
numbers
on.
game. It's
Yeah,
a
it's a
Okay, and
numbers
then
game.
now sexual harassment now, like going in COVID time, for those who are working at home and doing Zoom and all of that stuff, will this transfer over to
no.
like?
Gosh.
I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about the dick pics. It's going to happen. I'm sorry, I don't know how else to say it, but that's what it is. Like, Weiner, Anthony Weiner. I mean, that's his name. I can't believe it still to this day. Sending photos out. But if you're going to do it could that now become part of this whole new COVID land of people working from home that, know them from the workspace and personal, and then next thing you know, you're all working from home. So now here someone's messaging you porn, whatever their little body parts or whatever, and I'm saying little for Anthony Weiner, but you're going to start sending stuff that you shouldn't and doing weird Zoom calls that you shouldn't. You know what I mean? Like, could that get weird
But you
sexual
can
harassment
block
wise?
people. You can block people,
but
right?
but you're at work, right? This is still a work environment. So now there's this whole other social land of harassment. Seriously.
Interesting idea. I haven't heard of that happening, but you know what? It does make some sense to me that, people are messaging more, and so maybe there are more messages out there that could be illegal. And maybe they feel safer because it's from a distance and they're not in the middle of the workplace where there's tons of other people. So possibly.
But the liability
I haven't
is
seen
pretty
a trend
high,
in
though,
it.
because you can get caught because everything is traceable on the internet.
Oh,
Just
yeah,
like
sure.
Anthony Weiner.
Sure.
I just like to pick on him, but because he deserves it. But I mean, everything's trackable, so maybe it won't happen. But I think people do it and forget. They'll just think, a text message, I can do this. You know what I mean? People forget. I mean, the politicians do. So.
Yeah. Most of that isn't workplace sexual harassment because most of them weren't employees. But there were times when it was, and then it is workplace sexual harassment. When it's not, it's usually not illegal activity. It's just really bad, political maneuvering. It's just dumb. Well, so it's worse than dumb. I don't mean to discount it. It's ugly, and but it's not necessarily illegal.
I think the whole point of these laws that we put in place are to keep bad behavior from really getting bad. So somebody insults you or you're offended by somebody and what they say is different than being physically attacked. So so when I look at it, it's like what's serious and what's just people being stupid or people being, they're degrading other people by how their actions are by speaking is different than like physical behavior. So I always think like when somebody's saying things that nobody wants to hear, if you can stop it there, you stand a good chance of stopping it before it gets. That's where I think the law comes from. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. I feel like the laws are put in place to keep somebody who's stepping a little bit out of line and a little more out of line and a little more out of line before they really do something that's way out of line. Not saying that sexual harassment isn't a problem. I just feel like there's enough warning areas to nip it in the bud. If maybe that's the wrong way to say it, but to keep it from going any further to where it really becomes physical assault.
Yeah, no, I think that's one motivation for that, but I think the main thrust is to make the workplace safe and make the workplace more equitable. Because especially, when the laws about sexual harassment first came up, the idea is, hey, you're not treating your guys like this, and I'm getting treated like this. So this is just not fair in the workplace. They didn't say it was unfair outside the workplace. Of course, if you're a supervisor or someone and you're doing that kind of thing after work, that could still be work related. But what they're saying is if you're just friends with someone or acquaintances, that's not illegal to, say something nasty. It's not illegal in most cases. So the thrust of all that was really to make the workplace more equitable and safe.
Yeah, because you should be working, not playing, pee-pee photos. Now that's my new word. I'm trying to get the right word for it. But you should not be, fooling around. But that's what I mean. It's equitable and doing the right thing. And, some people go to work wanting to do the right thing, and then you have some idiot that you have to work with that decides, no, I'm going to try and grope you or say things that they shouldn't say, and which is harassment. Verbal or physical, it's harassment. And that's what I'm saying about COVID now. I think it's just going to have this whole other weird world of that's going to be different. I don't know. It's going to be different with all the COVID, like what is happening with online communication. How is that? Like, and you could just turn people off and blame your internet. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with that. But I think it's going to be a different world over time, and we're going to hear more stories from that.
Yeah, you do bring up another interesting side idea from that, and that's I think once COVID gets tamed and under control, that we're going to see more people continuing to work from home. So I think you're
absolutely
right. That's a trend, and with that trend, you'll probably see more of the type of harassment you're talking about. I think that makes sense to me.
I want to talk about successor employer liability. I find it really fascinating. Just even as a business owner, when
I had to throw that one in there.
Yeah, but I do want to just touch on the expansion of California Family Rights Act. This is we were going to touch on that earlier anyway, and it's important because this is a big expansion of that. And you've got to look at what's happening to the kids, and this is really for businesses who have over 50 employees, right? And this is about unpaid leave, like 12. This is a big one.
Well, it's big. The 50 employees is the old law, and I started out with that saying, here's what the law has been for a long time. If you have 50 or more employees, then employees who have a serious health condition or their immediate family members, parents, spouses, or kids, they can have 12 weeks off to take care of their own serious health condition or that of their immediate family members. And they also can do it to bond with a baby or an adopted kid or a foster care child that's newly placed. But now that law has been changed and amended to apply to businesses that have 5 or more employees. So that's a burden. The reason why I started with 50, they didn't want these small businesses to have the burden, and now they're placing that burden on the small businesses.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that's a sea change. I mean, that means almost every restaurant has got to deal with this. That means any mom and pop store that has a few employees, selling nuts and bolts has got to deal with this. And you were talking about California regulation. Well, this is more regulation because now these small employers are going to have to deal with it. It'll make, it drives the cost of business up, and it may make it a lot harder for those businesses. Well, it's relatively harder. But on the other hand, it's nice to have the ability to take off work and not get paid. It's not a paid leave situation. Not get paid and take care of your own serious health condition. It's not any health condition. It's not just a cold. I mean, it's got to be serious. So,
that's what I said about
again, there's two sides of that coin. There's just two sides of that coin.
But that's what I said about California law is like it's protecting and charging. People are going to have to pay for protection, basically. So your employer is paying for your protection.
To some degree,
it's all a two-sided coin, like it is. And it's like, okay, that's why I think this is so important for businesses opening in California and that they know about it so that they can go in and get maybe more investors to help. You may think, oh, I can just do this. No, get more investors or look at it, you know what I mean, and know what you're getting into. Because California, like, there's a reason why people live there. It's freaking beautiful, man. It's a beautiful state. So there's a reason why, and it's hard, but it's beautiful at the same time. You got wineries, breweries. Look at San Diego, the largest county.
It's a wealthy state too. There's,
Yes.
what, the fifth largest economy in the world or something like that. I can't forget what they quote. It's big.
That's why California is kind of like Texas in this weird way. I feel like California and Texas are rivaling in a way. That Texas is like, yeah, well, we've always been our own republic, and then California's like, screw you, we're one of the top two. And this is and New York's got its thing going too, but that's like New York's got a little crazy. But like California is that economy, but I think it's going to balance out. I think COVID is going to shake. I think we haven't even seen the beginning of the change of size. Like when you're in a wildfire, and we can talk about that, like speaking of California, we've been through those. You're in the wildfire and you're handling exactly what's going on right there and then. The stuff after the wildfire is actually the hardest thing. It's the hardest part. You're putting everything together, and there's a change of what's going on. And some changes are positive. There's always positive and negative, right? And I think we're not there yet as a country or the world to see what's going to happen yet. We've got the first footsteps, but I think it's going to change, Ward. I think everything we're talking about is going to change. I do. I think it's going to change.
Yeah, well, it's definitely going to have an effect in different ways on the business outlook and our economies, no doubt.
Yeah, I think it is, because everyone's had a change, and it hasn't we haven't had the time to, like, it hasn't fluctuated over yet. It hasn't turned over yet. You know what I mean? People have been dealing, and then it's going to be, oh, we're going to do this, So I think, I don't know, there's a lot of lessons that have been learned, but this successor employer liability, I think this is important too, because a lot of businesses are changing hands and merging and doing all kinds of things. I know that, when we do business with clients and companies, it's like, no, if someone has, purchased something from us, it's from them, not necessarily you. And you're going, okay, this law says when someone is if you purchased a business and the employee is owed a paycheck, right, or something like that, that the new owner
no.
That's why I'm not a lawyer.
All right, here's the problem. What you would see happen. All right. So let's say you have 50 employees, and you didn't pay a couple of them properly, or maybe there was a class action. You didn't pay a bunch of them properly. Doesn't really matter that much. A business might try to escape that liability by, changing its name, resurrecting itself someplace else, maybe change its location to, and say, hey, that person over there, who no longer works for us, by the way, was owed money by that company, but this new company over here doesn't owe them a dime. You saw that in many different ways. I mean, there might be some type of judgment that isn't even employment related that goes against the company, and they might just go away and pop up someplace else and say that judgment doesn't apply to us. But this law only applies to wages that are owed. So in order to get around that kind of thing, this law says, well, a company that pops up and is basically the same, they still owe that employee the wages that the old company owed them. If the company's bought and it still is run essentially the same, then that new company still is liable for all unpaid wages that were the unpaid wages based on the old company.
You're buying the debt, basically.
Yes. You're right. And often those types of things, like I used to do a lot of class action work, and so like back in I'm going to say like 2007 or 8, there was a pretty big class action that we were a part of, and I had another group of attorneys in on it. And they decided to settle pretty quickly because they were selling the business. And they wanted, and part of the sale was to negotiate that away. So in big transactions, usually that stuff's taken care of. But in the smaller transactions, maybe someone would figure it out. Maybe they wouldn't. They're supposed to disclose, but maybe they didn't. And then what are you going to do if it's not disclosed? So it was a bigger problem with smaller transactions, not those big ones where they've got teams of lawyers figuring everything out.
Wow.
But it definitely was a problem.
Well, that's important because that is important. I know people that have gone into businesses and not realized that was hanging on the shoulders, and especially if they're buying a business from like without a realtor or anybody involved. If they're going from like a person, like say buying like a restaurant or bed and breakfast or something, small business, but still expensive, a small vineyard, whatever. But not knowing that part is there. Like you should have a forensic book person or something like this. You have to have like the forensic accountant.
Don't you have to disclose that when you're selling?
Well, normally you would.
Yeah.
But what this law is trying to go to is they want to make sure that this employee gets paid what they're owed. So they're going above and beyond just the contractual ramifications of it. Because I may have to disclose that, but they'll go, well, you owe it, so you take care of it, and I'm not going to worry about it. But now that the buyer can't say that, so the idea is make sure that the person who is owed wages gets wages.
So it's going to make it a negotiation part of the deal.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it'll be like if
it's
that
more
person,
serious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nancy hit it, though. You're supposed to disclose that stuff anyway in the transaction. But maybe that the disclosure didn't carve out a way to pay the person who's actually owed.
Wow. That's amazing. I like that.
Disclose it, but it's the buyer's problem.
The buyer's going to go, hey, that was
now the buyer's got the problem, right?
Yeah. But then if you're an astute buyer and it's been disclosed that there's this problem, then you reduce the buying price.
No, but the other person will go, I'm sold. That's it. I don't care. That's the thing. It's like you can both
reduce what you're paying.
Yeah.
Well, you need to do your due diligence. Need to know that it's a liability that is clearly owed by the purchaser. There's no question as to who owes it. The purchaser does. Or the new business that pops up that's still the same business still owes it, even though you have a different name, different location.
Exactly. There's always
there's certain requirements. It's got it's
cool.
A situation where you're producing the same product, so if you change the product, you probably wouldn't know it anymore.
Yeah.
So there's certain requirements you have to meet, but assuming that you can, and the idea is that the legislature is trying to make this a broad law so that people who were not paid wages get paid wages by the next business.
Yeah.
Exactly. I like that law because I think there's people.
I think it's
screw
fair.
With the. Yeah, I think it's really fair because people screw with the person doing the work, and they're like, no, you go here, you go there, and the person is just trying to survive and live. And here are the two people, one's buying, one's selling, both are getting what they want, and the person who did the work ain't. And that's wrong. And there's that turnaround, and I've been through it just as a contractor, and had that, like, excuse me, pay your bill. Just because you're selling, you pay your damn bill. I'll turn you in, so, and I'll send Nancy after him, and once that happens, no, seriously, nobody wants Nancy to go after her. Like, no, she'll go after you. No, you don't, because she has words. She takes care of people, and I mean, no, it's a good. I'm just kidding, but she is. If I have to have Nancy call you, just know you've gone to the other level and you're done.
Oh, wow!
Just saying.
I've never been to that level.
No, you'll never
go there,
go to
Ward.
that level. No, you'll never go to that level. I know because I'm just saying it. I'm her daughter, and I know not to go there. Don't mess. I don't care what age you are. It's like you're always a kid. You know what I mean? You're always a kid, and don't ever
That's
mess with
right.
your mother. It doesn't matter how old you are, how old she is. It's always going to be there, and she'll always have that upper rein of like, don't do this. We're both that
You
way.
heard it first, right here.
Hey,
Big player.
Yeah,
hey,
there you go.
listen.
It's written in
Yeah,
stone.
You
Ward,
did it, Lisa. You said
Ward,
it.
I know, I know.
I'm going
Yeah,
to
you
play
know what?
it back
I
to
want
you.
something somewhere, right? No, but Ward, always good to have you on the show, and this is always a big one where we go through everything, and it's always a little longer, and we appreciate it. And we appreciate you letting people know what's going on, especially for Californians and those moving to
Mhm.
California, whether you are owning a business or are an employee. It's important that you do know both sides of the coin, and
Think
California
so.
definitely has both sides, and I think some of the laws are really cool. Some of them, I think it's just hard for the employers too. It's hard, and
Yeah,
people just have to
yeah,
find
no.
their way. Yeah, I mean, I ain't,
There's
I
still
ain't,
a lot of business going on, and yeah, you're right. It depends on the law. Sometimes I go, oh, you're just piling too much on the business owners, and sometimes, like the last one we just talked about, I go, oh, I think that makes sense. I think I don't
Yeah.
mind.
I like the
Yeah.
sexual harassment training too because I know it goes on, and I want. Ward, I mean, you don't cover sexual harassment and what happens with government stuff, government contractors. Do you do that?
Oh, well, government contractors.
Like, what if
Yeah,
you're in the government? Like,
yeah.
if you're
Well,
working
in
for
the
the city?
government. Boy, that's. I'd have to look and make sure to see whether they're excluded from this or not. I'm
Do you
going to
ever
say I
deal
think
with
they're
that? Like, go
not.
to a city, like when stuff goes down, or like strictly business?
No,
Like,
I've never been retained by a city, so
but would you do it? I
sure.
mean, are you allowed to? Okay, cool. I didn't know
Yeah,
if they
yeah.
had their own thing. Like, if it's like, like the military
Well,
has their own thing.
normally they have their own inside counsel, and
Exactly.
some of them are more active than others. Some of them are really more like traffic cops who say, "Oh, I see this problem. I'm going to get the right attorney on this."
Mm.
Like the city of San Diego, though, they have a whole huge cadre of attorneys. It's called the city attorney, and they
Mm.
have I don't know 100 attorneys. They've got a lot of attorneys employed there, so they
Wow.
don't really go outside their own confines. They don't
Mm.
really have a lot of outside counsel. I'm sure they do in certain situations, but they do most of their own work. So it kind of
So
depends.
now, okay, I know. Last question before we go. And we got good music to play. It goes back to the Craven Raven cocktail contest, right?
Oh
But
yeah, I was number
I
five.
know,
Number
I know you.
You
Hey, you
go.
ranked. You ranked. We liked your cocktail.
Yeah,
Um,
we did. We drank several of them.
so on the
Good for
tour,
you.
listen, all of these courthouses have been really interesting, and I can't wait to talk more with you on a different show and just in person. Like, this is so cool. So many courthouses have such history of being burned down. Like, these were the places where the other person came in and said, "Screw you, I'm burning your courthouse down." Like, they did that. Like, during war and all this stuff, the courthouse was the main deal. If you had a courthouse, you were developing the town. It was one of the first things they did, and I find it fascinating. And it was also about like part of like a territory becoming a state, and it's like crazy cool, interesting stuff. And so we've been photographing them and going outside. You can't go in. Like, it's like trying to go to the Capitol buildings right now. And it's been a little difficult. They're closed, or there's a protest, or a riot going on, depending on what time you arrive. You get there early, you'll get the riot, the protest. Then later, you'll get the riot. So it's been a very interesting tour this year. But the courthouses, a lot of them are closed. I mean, and that's unfortunate. So, like, it's ruining my photographs, everybody. Have those signs outside there. So, what's San Diego like? Are you still like? Are you having to do everything through Zoom? Like, or are you able to? I mean, I know you just said you had this
Oh,
other shutdown. Like,
yeah.
what's that like in the process right now? For just, I mean, eh? Or is it better?
Yeah. No. Any gathering of people. So, for instance, referral groups. That's all Zoom. No one's doing that. You're not supposed to. There are probably some that might meet, but it's illegal. They're not supposed to do it. But
Wow.
I think most people aren't. So that's all Zoom stuff. All professional presentations are all webinars now. You don't go to a meeting place and have a presentation anymore. So yeah, all that kind of thing is Zoom. Now they had opened it up for lunches, and I was doing probably averaging a lunch a week for a while, face to face. But now you can't do. Now with the new governor, you can't do it anymore.
Oh God, Ward's hungry.
But then,
I'm hungry.
How about the government being liable for their actions when they decide you can't do this and you can't do that?
Oh,
and so
Nancy.
wait.
Oh God, we're gonna get so many people sending us hate mail right now.
No, but I'm just saying that it's, there's supposed to be some kind of, I don't want to say stimulus, I want to say payback for closing down, some kind of reparation for being forced to not run your business.
Ooh. No, not any reparation that I'm aware of.
Reparation, that's a big word. That's a big word.
If employees take leave under any of the leaves we've talked about, the federal Corona first, or the Families First Corona Virus Response Act, and the California equivalent of that, which is the paid sick leave that we talked about for the larger companies, because the Family First, a federal one, covered only if you had fewer than 500 employees. California said that's not fair. Let's get them all. But I'm sorry. What question was I answering? I'm traveling on.
No, she was just carrying on about there should be reparations for businesses that have
reparations.
Yeah.
Right.
Said you need to close down, and then the business are like, well, now we're screwed. Thank you very much.
No. There's no reparation. But what I was going to say is, if those people take leave, if your employees take leave under those acts, the government will cover that through payroll tax. You don't have to pay as much anymore. So that is, maybe a reparation. But if you're closed and you can't open again because your revenue is so far down, no, you're screwed. And that's the big problem.
Well, that's all nice.
Now, there are some programs, like local programs, and I think maybe some national programs too, where you can apply for loans, apply for grants. So there's that kind of thing, but that's not a reparation.
No. Nancy's she just wanted to use a big word.
Okay, I love that.
Just kidding. It's
testing my vocabulary.
I know. I'm going to get my crossword book out right now and say you will use this word in the crossword.
Well, no, I just in some areas I think it would be just that reparations are something to be considered.
Yeah, I think it's
kind of
like.
Yeah, but who's going to pay for that? The taxpayer?
Exactly.
The taxpayer's going to want to do it? I don't know.
At the end of the day, taxpayers pay for everything. So what's the
difference? That's a very broad statement.
Yeah, but it's pretty accurate. I mean,
you got an attorney on the show, Nancy. You're going to get me.
I know, but all the salaries of all our government employees come from where? Taxes. So at the end of the day, taxpayers pay for everything.
Yeah, if we pay for the roads, we pay for, and then we still have to pay for toll roads.
Everything the government does, yes, taxpayers pay for. All right, so now we're getting into something that really gets me hot and bothered. No, taxpayers don't pay for everything because the federal government has a $25 trillion debt. And so they borrow a lot of it.
Yeah, but so how does that happen? I mean, how does that happen? Oh, we'll just go and do this even though we don't have the money. I say people like that should be fired.
Well, we get the government we deserve.
I'm just putting mine in there. Stop campaign contributions. I'm done with it. Stop it. Stop putting the money towards where we have all these federal buildings that are open. We have all these buildings that are open and done. Yeah. No one's taking care of them. And we have all these homeless people in the streets because our world is weird with not taking care of mental health. So fix the buildings, put the people in the buildings, stop it. and stop
I
your
know.
campaign contributions.
We read
So that's
somewhere
it.
that the
We've all
federal
had a rant.
government, the federal government is the biggest landlord in this country.
Yes.
Hello.
So there it goes. All right. We've all had a good rant.
That was a great rant. Loved it.
It's
That was a
good.
good
It's
one.
good. All right. But listen, the courthouses are still closed. And listen, take your signs down. I want to take good photos of these courthouses for Ward as we travel the country.
Yeah, please do that.
I know. These buildings are like, and then they'll go around the corner. Like this was burned down. Every single courthouse has been burned down. Like this was I don't know what was going on, but maybe it's all the Civil War history that we've been those states.
Depends on the state, Lisa.
They were burning. Every single one has been burned down, even in Prescott, Arizona. Then they moved it. They moved it here, and then they'll have a retro one later. And those are kind of cool. So anyway. Ward, we've been doing a lot of good on this Law and Order thing, and we have some good, haunted Law and Order stuff, too, that'll come up soon. So anyway,
awesome.
Everyone, the real stuff, go to the website, bestemploymentattorneysandiego.com, and call Ward if you have a question. He does take calls, and he won't charge you for the first call. Right, Ward? You're nice.
Right.
Oh, that's right. And if you want to buy Ward lunch, apparently he's hungry. Do it. So do that.
Yeah, it'll be the best money you ever spent.
I know. Check out an article outlining all the new laws of 2021. It's up on blendradiotv.com. Also, COVID laws and the AB5 and all of that. It's on there too. Just type it in. Go to Ward. You'll find him in our expert department. And you can also keep up with Ward at Twitter at Ward-Heinrichs. He's also on Facebook. And you can keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. Thank you, audience, for always keeping up with us and staying with us. And we're going to close with a song from the Cravens over in South Florida. This is their latest single. It's called Distance of One. They rock. They're awesome. And I'm so glad they're keeping new music out. It's a brand new single. It just dropped just the other day. So we're going to play it because we're like, hey, Ward's on the show. And he entered the Craven Raven cocktail contest with them. He won fifth. Was it fifth place? I thought it was third. I always remembered it as third.
I think it was fourth, actually. It wasn't. I don't think it was fifth. But I think it was the top third.
Oh, but it was still good,
Yeah.
So,
anyway. It was cool. Very cool. I got a lot of good prizes from that, too.
I know. He got prizes. He got T-shirts, all kinds of good stuff. So here it is. Distance of One. You can keep up with the Cravens at cravensongs.com. Thanks, Ward. You take care, and we'll talk to you on our Christmas party real soon.
You're welcome. Real soon. I can't wait to do that, and thanks for having me on.
All right. Take care. Here it is.
Okay.
Distance of One.